Wonderful. Thank you very much, Jane. I'm only going to be standing up here for a second while we sort of do a little bit of the housekeeping. I hope everybody enjoyed some lunch and, as Jane says, are feeling a little bit more invigorated. I thought this morning's sessions were absolutely fascinating, and what I do enjoy hearing is across cups of coffee in the networking break is people saying how the cross-pollination of information, the sharing of information, and actually people having their eyes opened here in this room as to what's going on in North America, in Saudi Arabia, in France, in the UK, and I think that's one of the best and most important purposes of the RLI Global event. So here today, we're going to dive into one of the most pressing challenges that face destinations. It faces us as property developers and all businesses around the world, and that's how to effectively, recover effectively and efficiently after setbacks, economic challenges, financial headwinds, governmental changes, all these sorts of different things which have faced us all in this room. And what I particularly want to do is to actually talk about this in a very macro sense as opposed to using specific personal case studies. A couple of people said to me this morning, it's been fascinating to hear project by project as we've heard this morning. But here we're going to be talking about how you can take away some of these ideas and thinking, how you can face economic challenges and maximize growth. We're 3 years after the pandemic. The global economy was severely disrupted. We want to put that into the rearview mirror. The rapid pace of change has focused and forced us, particularly in areas like tourism, retail, and real estate, to adapt very quickly. And some people have adapted better than others. And I think we've got to acknowledge that. And so that's why I think the discussion today is going to debate some of these strategies, the things that destinations and businesses can do to implement, changes to foster economic resilience, and also how to remain future-proofed, in what is a consistently volatile market. It's the one thing that we can agree on. The economy is always volatile. So, we're going to also explore the critical role of innovation, of public-private partnerships as well in all of this, and marketing, in the way that shapes the future of economic recovery, and find out the path towards sustainable growth. So joining me today, we have 4 distinguished panelists, and I'm delighted to say that we've almost pulled people from the 4 corners of the earth to give us the best view of this topic, and a balanced view as well, I have to say. The format for this session is going to be slightly different to this morning's. I'm going to join the panel in a second, but each of the panelists is just going to show a very short reel, a minute or so, and then they'll talk briefly about themselves, and then we're going to dive straight into a group discussion. So it won't be the similar kind of one, then one, then one. It'll be straight into group discussion. So let me take my seat, and hopefully you can still hear me when I sit down over here. Okay, so left to right, as you're looking, we have Carrie Goldberg, co-founder of the Alternet Ventures. Then we have Yurdaer Kahraman, who's chief executive of FİBA, which is an enormous company, not just focused on retail and real estate, but many other markets as well, which he'll tell us about. We have Anthony Coy, founder and president of the Synol Group and managing partner of LDV, bringing a very European French flavour to the conversation today. And on your far right, we have Edie Rodriguez, who's the board member on Saudi Tourism Authority, who's flown all the way across from Miami to be with us today. So if we can just play the first film, which is for Carrie, before Carrie introduces herself. Welcome, Carrie. I think very impactful. Carrie, tell us about yourself, the Cagency, and the Outernet.
Yeah, sure. So before we start on the Outernet and how I landed there, I thought it might be important to tell you a little bit about the history. About 22 years ago, I started a business called the Cagency. We were in-house at photography studios, nightclubs, restaurants. I was in my early 20s, now you know how old I am. And we replaced the in-house team, or developed the in-house team to market and book the spaces for large corporate events, film and photo. I think it was Dimitri earlier that acknowledged that when Lehman Brothers tanked, it sort of changed the trajectory of a lot of businesses, and it really opened a huge new door for my business. Some of you in the real estate industry might be familiar with a man by the name of Sam Zell. I grew up in Chicago, and Sam's organization had reached out to me. He was very forward-thinking, as his organization still remains to be so, and gave me a commercial property on Michigan Avenue, which really changed the entire trajectory of my business. He basically said, whatever you do with this empty property is better than what I'm going to have, because nobody's signing a lease right now. So very shortly thereafter, I put in Sony, PlayStation, Target, you name it, and then the world of commercial real estate opened to me. So this is before the term really pop-up existed. So since 2008, I just looked, I think we've brokered about 3,000 contracts for commercial real estate developers. Everything from Madonna's World Tour rehearsals to, I just wrapped a year long with the estate of Basquiat, 3.5-year gym with Nike, first Givenchy pop-up. So it really very much ranges across small commercial spaces on up to large ones. We just actually launched Johnny Depp's first art exhibition in Manhattan as well. So that is ultimately kind of how I ended up at Outernet. I have historically taken a look at what some people might call troubled real estate and found a way to monetize them, calling the likes of Brian Eno to put in art exhibitions, or Victoria Beckham to do their runway shows. And I was approached by Outernet about 2.5 years ago through a client of mine who was the former CFO of Really Useful Group. And they said, can you take a look at this property? There's 25,000 square feet underground, and they don't know what to do with it. So everybody had come in, from the likes of Guinness to put a distillery in, Live Nation to put a live music venue in. But ultimately, the district itself, it ticked so many boxes of everything I'd done for 20 years previously. I was taking empty spaces, building out experiential events with major brands, but then I also had to buy billboards, I had to find hotels, I had to work with restaurants, and the district itself, if you haven't seen it, it's just a few blocks from here, has all of those. I can sell media to brands, I can sell experiences above ground, there's a 55-room residence and hotel, 2 restaurants, but I could also custom build a space from scratch to my entire desire. So the entire idea behind it was to take a space where I could have Chanel during the daytime and then do a rave at night. So what you just saw there is actually the first 12 months of our business, and I'm proud to say we did have Chanel during the daytime and a rave at night, and it does work. Yeah, we've just celebrated 2 years of business, and that's Outernet. Well, so that's me.
How many people here have been to see the Outernet? Because it literally is 300 meters away from here.
We did a tour for our last event, so it was on the retail safari.
Awesome.
So
okay.
There should be some people in this room that visited last year.
Perfect.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Carrie. And then just down the line there, we have Yurdaer Kahraman, Chief Executive of FİBA. Can we play Yurdaer's movie, please?
Just some companies.
Well, thank you. Tell us a little bit more about FİBA and the kind of work you've been doing.
Yeah, just briefly, thank you having me here as well. I mean, since today in the morning, amazing. I took so many notes, and I'm very impressed. Sometimes, I mean, we are attending fairs where the outcome is maybe not that much than I have seen today in the morning. The quality is very high. And I have even learned after 25 years of my experience. I mean, Jane and me, we know each other since, I don't know, I don't call a number, but always very young. I was 15 years in EC Group, worked with Alexander Otto, and in almost 14 countries. And then since 12 years, I'm working for a Turkish family, and which is the owners of the FİBA Group. And FİBA Group is a worldwide acting global company with almost 70 companies, subsidiaries in different fields. Some you have seen here, like retail, like renewable energy and commercial real estate. We have also banks. One of the biggest banks in the Netherlands is the Credit Europe Bank, belongs to our group. We have insurances. We have partnered insurances with HDI from Germany, Hanover. We have partners like Metro AG, Metro Properties from Germany. You know them very well. And we do have an own university. Today in the morning, what we have heard is the talents are very important. So the education and the talent development is crucial. And we as commercial properties, also globally from China to Eastern Europe, are acting very globally in terms of synergies. And these projects, almost 90%, I have seen the movie in the morning, I need to say it's nicely made. 90% of that real estate products that you have seen here is refurbished, reconverted, enlarged, and we act toward the competition somehow slightly distressed, let's say. Mm-hmm. But that is a good example, or there are good examples. We can just later talk about that.
Wonderful. Thank you, Yurdaer. And then along to Anthony. Could we play Anthony's film, please? Wonderful, great. Anthony, just give us a bit of a perspective. You're going to bring us some retail perspective into this discussion, aren't you?
Yeah, thank you. We made a video in less than half a day. It's not the same quality than the others. And many of the projects that you can see here are, some of them are investment that the company made. Some of them is an advisory because our company in Turkey made many advisory in the property management, design, leasing, and others. And we work strongly on regeneration of the existing site, existing shopping center, that it was to be replaced by the mixed-use project. And what you saw here is really the topic of the discussion: how we can create a sustainable project from, existing site that is not anymore, able to be sustainable or anymore be performant. Anyway, that's what you saw here. And a few words about myself. I'm a CEO, founder of the company since almost, for over the last 13 years, senior, and also we are partners and also had a joint venture with several fund and fund manager, others together. In few words, we have invested about 12 billion euros in 15 markets. And we are a little bit special because we are pioneers in the field of, sales and leaseback investment for the French retailers. We finance Carrefour, Auchan, many brands from France in Eastern Europe. The first Auchan in Romania, we made the first, hypermarkets in the French brand in, Hungary and other places like Poland and others. We were the first in our company, Sefik in Turkey since '84. Is one of the pioneers of investing in the company, in the retail properties for different mission that it was launched at that time, and we invest over 800 assets in this market. To tell you, it's more than 10,000 due diligence to bring 800 acquisition, and also. From one field to another, we start in mass market investment in hypermarket, let's say shopping center dedicated for the, let's say like retail boxes, where you mass market target to the luxury, because today we move from one market to another one. And we are now very active in London, in UK, and also in the States or in France, and in other markets in the luxury sector, because we have invested $1 billion euros in different flagship of like Saint Laurent, Gucci, Prada, and others, many others in France and in the UK also.
Amazing.
And we had different companies from advisory to investment management, asset management, investment management, and we in different market we had different kind of presence as investor or service provider. I'm very proud, of the work that we made in Turkey, and we are going to talk about that more and more. I think, in this field of sustainability and how we can, of course, create a sustainable investment, Turkey is a fantastic territory to learn and to, create a project with the highest level of innovation, like Dubai and, let's say, some dynamic destination, because in Turkey, if you're not 100% right, if you're not 100% performant, if you are not excellent in everything, your mall is dying in the next 24 months after opening. The thing is, it's a fantastic territory that innovation and expertise of the people grow at a very high speed. And we were very active in Turkey with a big team and a big investment and very performant. We made a great experience in this country.
Fantastic.
And today we are focused less from 15 countries. Now we are only active in 3 countries. And the team get older. I'm 64, and everybody tell me, when you are going to retirement? I say, come on, I feel like a 34. Anyway, I love, my friend, I love retail. I hope to work another 10 years and be sustainable as a manager. Anyway, I hope that
we're going to draw on a lot of that experience, Anthony, today as we pull everything together. And I think your fund management experience is going to be particularly interesting. And then just the last of the introductions is Edie Rodriguez from Saudi Tourism. And interestingly, when we're talking about maximizing economic recovery, we're talking about driving an economy here with Saudi. So if we can just play Edie's film and then hear a little bit more.
Not working?
Just going to reboot it quickly, I think.
I landed in an unexplored territory. I saw things you wouldn't believe. Eons of time passing through the palm of my hand. Structures that defy logic. Monuments frozen over epic dunes. Untouched, uncharted, unfathomable. A world of legends in a grain of sand. Horizons so vast, they send shivers down your spine. I challenge the boundaries of my imagination. Each encounter, a revelation. I was the first, but I won't be the last. This land is calling.
Wow, yeah.
I take no credit for that magnificent mini movie. It's all the team. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for your time. And Jane, thank you for inviting me to be here. Dan, thank you for moderating. And thank you to my esteemed co-panelists. So I'm Edie Rodriguez, a New York girl who moved to Miami 40 years ago. And just a quick bio, as Anthony requested, I was told as a young girl, get a great education, find your passion, and follow it. And the only passion I had or desire was to travel the world in the most luxurious manner and fund it myself. I wanted to be independent. And so I started, literally, I'm a classic example of somebody who started at the bottom out of university and worked my way to the top, if you will. And so I started as a travel consultant in New York and got to travel the world and had promotion after promotion after promotion. For 12 years of my tenure, I ran a technology company for the travel industry, which I had 90% market share, and all the clients were the CEOs and chairmen because they were very predatory contracts. Transitioned to the cruise side and had worked my way up to CEO and chairwoman in the cruise industry. And now I do a lot of board work, and one of which is on the board of the Saudi Tourism Authority. And my journey with Saudi really started about 8 years ago when the PIF came calling, asking me to be a special advisor to a project they were doing. As things happen there, they start as a project and then they decide go or no go, and then if they are going to go, they morph into a company, which happened in that scenario. I couldn't be on the board of that company at that time because I had a conflict of interest, so they asked me to be on the board of the Saudi Tourism Authority because of my 4 decades. I started when I was 2 of a career in travel and tourism. But my passion is always all forms of luxury. I say fashion is my passion, so I'm all these retail customers. I love retail on every level, and I love luxury on every level, and travel luxury. So what we're doing in the KSA and what they are doing is, many years ago they announced Vision 2030. And soon to be Vision 2040. And it is just monumental in what I have seen from my very first visit to the KSA, particularly as an American female. People say to me, you go there, aren't you afraid? I say, I feel safer there than in my hometown of New York. You just don't know what you don't understand. So in any case, they decided to make this multi-trillion-dollar investment in bringing all these fabulous projects, some of which you've heard about earlier today, to fruition, but they want to do it in the most sustainable, ethical way around UN SDG guidelines and a myriad of other benchmarks. You've heard LEED certified, and they've really coined 2 phrases vis-a-vis travel. One is regenerative tourism, which is all about sustainability, and the other is aquatic urbanism. So you see they have these beautiful islands and coral reefs and Red Sea adventures you can go on, but they want to be very sensitive to the land, to the sea, and there is nothing but opportunity there, and particularly as that then dovetails into retail and experiential at every level, not only luxury. So that's my story. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you, Edie. And yeah, that film is just incredible. So you can see we have an excellent balanced panel, and through everybody's perspectives here, you can see that everybody's coming at the same issue of how do we address the challenges in the marketplace from different perspectives. And so we're going to look at sustainability, community engagement, revenue protection, the role of technology, and how that's going to drive economic recovery. We're also going to look at things like public-private partnerships as well, because I think that's one thing which is clearly one thread that is running through every member of this panel. So let's kick straight off, and let's go to you, Yurdaer, first. I mean, could you talk a little bit about your involvement with retail and public-private partnerships, and how that's helped to drive economic recovery in the face of some headwinds, and what kind of innovative approaches in that space with local government and public-private partnerships? How have you seen that help along that journey?
I mean, first of all, these are two different parts. Let's say one is public, one is private. The main topic is to bring them together, that each one can bring in to its expertise and knowledge, know-how. And then you need to set up a certain financial setup. I mean, the financing of such projects is also very important, so that the public sector is, for example, guaranteeing. And if you have, as a private investor, the guarantees somehow, and combining that, for example, with states-driven or government-driven banks, then your, let's say, return on invest is also somehow secured. The most important topic is also looking to the future, that you are setting up some, future cities, so that you put in e-mobility inside, and that you have, the right urbanization, that you have also the right, products and the right commercial properties as well, to also attract companies from abroad and different part of the world. With that, you bring again employment. So these are all functions that you not only can see like a PPP model. You need to bring that all under one umbrella, and then it works somehow. In the past, it was like the securing of the financing and the guarantees, and maybe sometimes there were also the situation that they neglect each other, let's say, and that was also a problem. But today we have seen, for example, that this works better, and I think that helps also some regions to increase and improve their urbanization. Another topic is, as I said, what is very important today, what we have heard as well, is also how you deal with real estate projects or commercial projects. That was fantastic what you said. I mean, I'm impressed what you have done, and I will visit that, you can be sure. What is important as well is that the time is changing so quick. When I was born, I went to a department store that lived 30 years. But today, people, they don't want to go to stores which are not changing, with the carpet, I don't know, 30 years ago, but with the product which is up to date, yeah. So another topic is kind of digitalization, what we talk, AIs and so on and forth. But also the real estate is important. What we do, for example, in terms of concept design or schematic design in projects, what we are setting up or what we are delivering to the markets, or what we are managing for third parties, that we are trying to make the architecture also flexible to react in the very close future, in 5 years, even in 2 years, to adapt. In China, for example, we changed 25,000 square meters on 3 levels in a shopping mall which has 125,000 square meters GLA. And we created a new area. We did edutainment with entertainment. So education and entertainment, we put it together to education. I think this is also very important. On the other hand, you have seen that on the movie, everyone is talking about Dubai or Riyadh, and these are fantastic projects. I have been also in Saudi Arabia. I will add to that as later maybe in a point. In Moldova and Chisinau, we have a great mall, which is almost 30,000 square meters GLA. So to strengthen that area, we set up another office tower, almost 20,000, and a Marriott hotel. And so we created a landmark agglomeration. When you talk to people, for example, when you are saying Chisinau, maybe they have seen the news now because there were elections. Then they were thinking, but when you're looking to the numbers, if this is mall creating more turnovers per square meter in euro, in dollars, than in Berlin or in Rome, then it makes sense.
Have you always had support from the local authorities and from the public sector to help change a local development plan or other perhaps some investments? I know I know, Carrie, in a second we were going to talk about how investment money can help to support the reinvigoration of spaces. But from a planning perspective, is it beyond planning, or is it just planning?
I'll give you directly an answer to this. For example, that example from Chisinau with the hotel, office, and shopping mall. In the back part of the shopping mall, we were looking for setting up a residential tower. But we have seen the need of residential is not that much in this area. So we need to act more micro. We went to the municipality as well and said, there is a need of health. We need a hospital. So they are also transporting that idea. And this will go to this direction. So we will not have the first, let's say, schematic plan, the concept design plan we had, and we talked with the municipality. You need to be also very flexible. I think municipalities has also learned that they change also their minds in the future. Because if you have a certain need, like Saudi Arabia, for example, when I have been there, there is a room and need for hotels and hospitals. Even in Jeddah, I mean, this is the main area of Saudi Arabia due to the, harbor and to the sea area there. And this is important. In the beginning, you can start, but even there, you need to advise municipalities, governance, whoever it is, that you might change as well. You need to change because, again, from the 80s, if you set up a shopping mall, you could run it 20, 25, 30 years. Today, if you set up today a shopping mall, for example, or whatever you do, then you need to be prepared to change it in 5 years, maybe in 6 years, 8 years. So the flexibility needs to be in the public sector as well, and on the same time at the private sector.
I mean, you're touching on an interesting point about the amount of time and what the time horizon is for different players in the market. So, I think we're talking about the public sector needing to have a much longer term vision. The private sector perhaps needs to make more return on the immediate side, but maybe we have an immediate problem: vacancy, derelict space, completely defunct areas of our towns and cities that need reinvigoration. Carrie, do you want to come in on that? Because clearly there were huge parts of high streets, cities which were dying and dead, and the customer had changed, they'd gone away, or perhaps maybe for public sector reasons they had been left to vacancies. But was that was something that triggered things after the Cagency, was it?
Yeah, definitely. So I think there's a big difference between 2008 and post-COVID. So when Lehman Brothers tanked, and again, I was very fortunate, I was dealing with very forward-thinking real estate developers that had a lot of their own cash. So people like Sam Zell or Young Woo, who gave me Pier 57, 400,000 square feet, and said, here are the keys, I can't touch it for 2 years, you figure out what to do with it. And all of a sudden he's like, wait, you made me how much money in 2 years? So they learned that it was not only...
How much money did you make in 2 years?
A lot, yeah.
Okay.
But people like that realized, not only was I putting money in their pocket, but I was marketing their properties. So Sam Zell, for example, on Michigan Avenue, I drew demand through the brands that I was putting in there. He had data, he had footfall, he was able to then turn on and lease it. So subsequently, people like Vornado and related came knocking. I started to deal with larger organizations that were using other people's capital, and I had a good run with them. But post-COVID, what I noticed was that some of the bigger buildings, even though I knew the owners, the banks had gone into receivership. The banks weren't willing to listen. So even though if I could show them, and I have an accounting background, I'm like a 4-alarm nerd alert. I studied in Japan, I worked at PwC, so I can talk to the real estate developers and show them exactly what I can do for their property, but the banks won't listen. So there's a space in New York that's been sitting empty, I think, for 5 years, and I could probably make them around $4 million a year if they would actually just hand me the keys to it. If they leased it, I think they might get 1.5 million, maybe, if they were lucky. They will not let me put a booking in there. Even though I know the owner, I used to ride horses with him, and he's like, my hands are tied, I can't, because the banks won't let me. So I think that it's easy for me to say, because I'm not lending people billions of dollars, but I think if the banks and the developers started to think again like entrepreneurs and think outside the box and say, look, 90% of 100 is better than 100% of nothing, they would then be in front of audiences and footfall and brands again and engage, rather than sitting there and handing it to a Cushman and Wakefield, whom again sort of see my business as a threat. They're not really interested in working with us, even though they'd like to take half of my commission. They don't want to necessarily engage with us because they think it's more work for them. But I'm actually paid marketing for their properties.
So you're talking about short-term covenant strength versus what the banks want, which is long-term covenant strength. Maybe we'll talk about that a little bit later. Anthony, just thinking about the public-private partnership element, we've just witnessed some incredible Summer Olympic Games in Paris, and we've seen in the run into that huge amounts of investment, not as much as in other cities, I would say, but a very efficient investment into Paris as a city. Streets like the Champs-Élysées, with their investment with luxury brands. As a case study, is there a better case study in the world for public-private partnership?
Yes. As you mentioned, Carrie, we can see in the city centers there's a big challenges, as big as some shopping centers. But when you go actually to many countries, there is always the same problem. Actually, in some cities, the shopping center, they came around the city or inside of the city, how the master planning was done, how the city invested, to support, private initiative, because nobody can do alone anything in the city, nothing. Even you want to change the door of your home, you need to have a kind of authorization from someone, you know what I mean? The things is we are dependent on each other is a key point. And what we saw during the pandemic, that in one of the most beautiful avenue of the world, some of the most prestigious avenue of the retail store, fashion, luxuries, we had up to 30% empty space.
You're talking about the
Avenue
Champs-Élysées.
of Champs-Élysées, you had half of some part of the kind of areas without tenants, and some tenants just left the keys and they say bye bye. I give the rents, but I don't continue to operate. Not only, let's say, on the bottom side of the brands. Let's say mass market brands that were looking for numbers, but even high, position, let's say top of the top. We had a real disaster on such areas, and actually you have still some street, Boulevard Saint-Germain, je dirais, you have also Saint-Michel, or some very historical best street. You see actually how, unfortunately, the change of behavior of the consumer, because I think there are two major things that they change actually the future of the cities, future of the retail shopping centers, is technology one hand and behavior of the consumer, nothing else. If you bring these two together, these changes together, bring for you major changes for our life.
Is this coming from the Paris government, Paris authorities, or
exactly.
French
That's
as a whole?
what's, bring us to see that one of the most beautiful city of the world. As you know, France is the first destination for the tourism, with almost 80 million people per year. Just more than population. French population, you have tourism coming. In some avenue like Champs-Élysées, you have over 150,000 people per day. It's a machine, okay? And it increased 5% per year. The French airport, they have to double in 10 years. You know what I mean? The tourism increase, population of the world increase. But how we can explain in such a dynamic city, you can have a street with the retailers that they die, okay? It's bringing you to think what we can do.
But with a new culture around
exactly,
that.
it's exactly to the question. Bring to the question that you explained. Ask a question. You can see at such a stage of difficulty, government should be present, city should be present, chamber of the commerce should be present. In all stage, even making more easy regulation. To make it faster, because unfortunately, all the projects in France, they can take 20 years. The latest shopping center I visited a week ago in Grenoble, one of the city that is not a small city, Olympic Games for Winter Olympic Games, was 20 years to get out some shopping centers. My project, Saint Laurent, 10 years. You cannot do any major project in France without 5 to 10 years and 5-6 permits, going to the different discussion with every stage, every level of stockholders. Anyway.
I think there were some really interesting articles in the Financial Times and The Economist in September essentially saying that public-private partnership
Is
is just key. It's not even
key.
let's see what
Yeah.
we can do to achieve it. It's
Yeah.
absolutely key. But we have a film that
Yes.
summarises the
Just
work in
before
Paris.
the film, I would like just one sentence. Is a reason that the city of Paris. I want to show you something that show you one of the biggest, let's say, initiative worldwide for the cities that they invest. They try to do something different. To bring some changes that help investors, developers, retailers. People in charge of animation all together come and join. The dynamic. Of course, we are not at the level of innovation that you can see in Dubai or some of the countries that actually like Saudi and others are investing massive money for that. But what you see, it's also the result of lobbying, investment that we made as a developer to talk with the cities. We need change. We need to make it better. We need to attract the people. We need to create a sustainable destination with the let's say all the dimension of attraction, because the combination of the things that create the site attractive, And what you can see here is a 10 years plan that is not only for Champs-Élysées, it's a big areas. That is bringing Champs-Élysées, Concorde, some of the streets. And after that, each street, each boulevard create an association, the investor, developer, retailers. We have a group of the people thinking, investing on the project, bringing to the city. And what you can see is not happen in one day. It takes 10 years. Look at that, please.
James, can we play the film? Thank you.
Sorry, it's a 5-minute film, but it's very small. Get to show you that all the area that was used by cars, and there is a cancellation of almost 30% of the area that's going shut down to be pedestrian, with many let's say initiative by the public and private sector to create a kiosk to improve the all kind of animation potential for the company that they can do things inside. And the Olympic Games shows for the first time ever that's happened in France, in Paris, because in the past Olympic was outside of the cities, how we can bring a fantastic event inside of the city, in the middle of, let's say, places, in the middle of the highway, in the middle of, the, let's say, a roundabout, everything. And Paris showed that the city can be a fantastic theater.
Is it public realm? Is it public realm then led?
Exactly.
Is that the main point that you would say, or is it
Sorry?
finance? Is it public realm, investment in public realm?
I mean, everything in, let's say, all the project that you can see here is not, it cannot be happened without private, let's say, partnership. This is idea come from private and public, and at the end of the story, even the renovation of some church is going to be done by, private and public sector initiatives. This kind of project will take a long time. Actually, what you can see here, when you see the history of Champs-Élysées and some of the streets around, you cannot recognize that. You cannot recognize even, the parkings. You cannot recognize, the pedestrian areas. Everything changed and is continue to change. Champs-Élysées, for example, more than 3 billion euros investment done only by luxury group. When you get in Paris, actually is one of the most important destination for the investment by the luxury group that the driving changes. 10 billion it was invested in few buildings, 10 million euros by few brands just to create a sustainable investment in some street that they can drive innovation.
They were some of the biggest
changes,
investment deals of their type in individual buildings.
Yes.
But Carrie, if I can come to you and talk about the experience in New York, perhaps on a shorter time frame. I was saying about this. We've been learning that Paris is a 10-year plan, but you're saying landlords come to you with some space. Did they also come to you with incentives as well, or did the local authorities come to you with any incentives?
So no, I mean, I have a pretty standard format where we really act like a broker for the spaces. And so it's sort of you eat what you kill in many ways. We do a lot of real estate consulting. So I've done a lot of work with big developers on feasibility studies on what makes sense for their property. So like Jamestown, for example, I think are probably some of the best placemakers in the world. I look at complicated projects with them on sort of ground up, even like elevators and toilets and stuff like that. So it's a little bit coming from a little bit of a different angle. What I would say, though, now, after having been in London for 8 years and having gone through the development of Outernet, I think that London, for example, Westminster, is very forward-thinking. They have given empty commercial spaces to a group here called Someday Studios, and they find up-and-coming brands, not established big luxury brands, to put on the high streets and give them a run, and they're helping with their entire business model. I think the meanwhile use space here is probably a little bit more forward than it is in New York. So you've got people like Drum Sheds that are working with the city to take a space that was sitting abandoned and turn it into an epic nightclub. So in many ways they're forward-thinking, but in other ways I would say that some of the penalties of working here, the business rates, are not sustainable. I'm probably going a bit off piece, but it's just my experience from Outernet. The hoops that we had to jump through to build those venues and the permits. And I understand you have a 25,000 square foot space in the center of London, and you've got residents around, so you want to make sure you have reputable operators. But it was cost prohibitive and time prohibitive to do it. Really, in the end, it was very, very painful to get through those processes.
For those of you not based in the UK, business rates is a very, very big topic, and a very big barrier to retail. Let me come over to Edie, because you've been waiting very patiently there, listening to very interesting dynamics with authorities and governments. You mentioned the PIF in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, using sovereign wealth money to invest into what we all see from the outside just to be the most phenomenal canvas to play with, to invest in, and to attract people in. So tell us a bit about that. This is going to be my first part of the question. The second part is, we talked about some of the economies that were affected by the pandemic, and one of them that you mentioned in your intro was the cruise ship and the tourism sector as well. Maybe you could wrap in these two elements in terms of government assistance and public-private partnership in terms of what you're doing with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia.
Well, I think the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, initially when they started, the PIF was funding this multi-trillion-dollar and very aggressive initiative. But like any good business people, they are businesses. They welcome the private sector. And so they do a myriad of things to attract global investment, including next week, the 8th Future Investment Initiative Conference, the Davos in the Desert. That's all about attracting partners on a global basis from anywhere to inject their money into the myriad of opportunities going on there. And I'm very bullish on everything they're doing there. So, I mean, if you're a company, a developer, you have those kind of funds, why wouldn't you want to partner with the PIF? But to the bigger question of private government partnerships, I think anywhere in the world, it has to be that symbiotic relationship, because time is money and you have to execute in an expeditious manner. And if you don't have that synergy along with the banking aspect, nobody wins. And then these debacles occur. And you can have a black swan event like the world saw with COVID. But when you look at the global economic meltdown of 2008, I mean, the difference pre and post, or comparing that comparatively speaking as a retail shopper or an entity. In 2008, people were still shopping up and down Madison Avenue, but they were embarrassed, so they wanted white, nameless bags. They didn't want you to see that it was a Balenciaga bag or a Vuitton shopping bag. bag, I mean. And now, of course, that quiet luxury where they don't wear their labels. But in 2008, they were still buying because they had the money to, but they didn't want the world to know, so they wanted white shopping bags. It's analogous because post 9/11, stores are closing down. I mean, I live not far from Sawgrass Mills, which is one of the largest outlet malls in South Florida. After Disney World, they get more visitors than anywhere else in the state of Florida, over 21 million a year. People come there, especially South Americans and Europeans, and they buy suitcases there, fill them up, and they fly home. So they have different sectors. That opened in October of 1990, and through the years as it continued to grow, they put these outer segments of luxury. So during the pandemic and post-pandemic, these fabulous luxury brands that put outlets there, everything from Prada, Etro, really some real high-end names, Dolce & Gabbana, many of them closed. But now they're reopening. And then if we look at Rodeo Drive from a retail example to your analogous to your Champs-Élysées example, I mean, they were coming in and robbing the stores and they just closed. So I think we're on the recovery, and even when economies are tough, people that have money are going to keep shopping luxury goods. And there are many, many reports that answer that and show that. And even in China, when the gentleman this morning spoke, I'm headed to China next week. China's a little bit of a different example, but they're still buying, maybe not in the way they bought years ago. So all of that has a play. And different industries, every industry was affected by COVID. I mean, the KSA was the first country literally to open up post-COVID. Their Ministry of Health allowed the world to open. They said, we have just got to get back. But work never stopped there. In the middle of a global pandemic and in the middle of a supply chain debacle, you had a place there called the Boulevard. And it's mesmerizing. It's a great experiential thing for the locals, for the tourists. And I couldn't get patio furniture delivered to my house during that. But yet, God bless them, they got thousands of chairs to put in Michelin star restaurants. So where there's a will, there's a way, and the KSA never stopped, and I believe they will become a new global benchmark for private and public sector and how to do it right in a sustainable way, and all of the important factors, and deliver those experiences. And proof in the pudding will be 2030. As I stated earlier, from 8 years of going there, the transition I saw is amazing, that I see firsthand. And when you look at something like that, they set up the infrastructure. 8 years ago, this country was closed off to most of the world, right? So if you look at America, we think of things in 4 years or 8 years. You look at China, they think of 50 years. But a kingdom thinks of it infinitely and forever. And that's what they're building the foundation for. So you have a population of roughly 35 million people, 70% of whom are 30 years or younger. They are building the infrastructure to educate their people, to have hospitals, to hire the world's best of the best, to educate their succession planning KSA national person who will take over within 3 years. So I believe that they're doing every step point in a really, really beautiful, wonderful way to manage that. But they also set up the infrastructure. They didn't just say, oh, let's open the country and things are going to be great and we're going to attract tourism. No, they allowed e-visas online to 49 countries. They bought airlines or did deals with airlines to create the lift to get you in there. They're building hotels, to the earlier comment. They needed hotel rooms. And every step of that infrastructure was put in place with a strategic plan that is now coming to fruition. And I believe they will be extremely successful. And come 2030 with World Expo, it will be like nothing the world has ever seen. And I've said from day one, it will probably be a Harvard business case study. But it cannot be done without private and public sector. And they were very bullish on that, and that's why they're doing it that way. And so what I loved about them as well, because if you show me a brick wall, I'm going to find a way to dig a tunnel, go up, over, fly a drone in. If I need to get through that brick wall, I'm going to get through it. That's just my MO. And they are exactly the same way, but on steroids. Nothing stops them. Not a global pandemic, not whatever challenges hit them, they find a way around it and they really bring it to fruition in the most expeditious and financially savvy way. So I give them a lot of credit and kudos to them. As I said earlier, if I can't be passionate about it, I wouldn't do it. So I'm passionate and bullish about what they're doing. So now when you look at this Black Swan event called COVID, and really February of 25 will be 5 years from when that started. So it's history. I always say the rear view mirror is small because you learn from the past, but the windshield is so big because you go forward with a lot of thunder.
I think a lot of countries are looking at Saudi Arabia and thinking, what can we learn from that?
Absolutely.
Clearly, there are a lot of other historic legacy issues that many other countries have, and problems that they're trying to overcome themselves. But I think we're all quite envious. Those of us who aren't from Saudi Arabia, we're quite envious of the kind of what seems to be a very clear path to introduce those sorts of things. One of the elements, actually, Edie, before we changed the topic, was you touched on some of the innovations that have helped to accelerate that and to set down solid foundations. And I want to talk about technology, because in terms of retail destinations, the introduction of retail technology and data systems, Yurdaer mentioned the importance of data, is just, how are we, how is Saudi Arabia using that, and how are they leveraging that to inform their future decisions?
So data is the new oil, for sure, and without data, you're not going to know where you're going and what you need. So clearly, data is critical, if not paramount. But they use it in a myriad of ways. So as an example, when the pandemic hit, everything went digitally on their phone. They almost run their country on the phone in a very different way than, let's say, China does. And it's fantastic. And if you talk to the citizens there, they tell you how fantastic it is as a citizen to live their life on that technology. And I embrace technology, so I say, wow, it's mesmerizing. The other thing about that population that is 70% 30 years or younger, you talk to these young people and they are so enthralled with their future. They are really happy. I tell them that should be your ad campaign, how happy your young people are, because that's your future. So they use technology, and what they don't have, they go and they find the world's best and figure out how to adapt it for their needs. And of course, they have the funding to do that. So they are very, very into the latest technologies in every way, shape, or form. And to give you an example, in a retail example, one that I personally like to look at is if you're in Riyadh, the Ritz-Carlton is there, and the Ritz-Carlton has the conference center adjacent to it. Well, right in front of that, on the corner, was this big piece of land that there was nothing on it. And you leave one day and you come back a few months later, and suddenly there is this amazing retail, I'm going to call it retail, but it's more than retail, complex called Via Riyadh. And it is beautiful. It has a St. Regis Hotel. It has luxury brands. It has fantastic Michelin star and down market type restaurants. It's this eclectic mix. But the way they designed it is it's an indoor-outdoor experiential space with technology. So the first time I went there in the daytime and I was looking at, oh, how pretty it is. And when I went at night, I thought I was in a different place because of technology and what they did with the way they designed it. Yeah. So they embrace technology, and they want to be the best of anything going on in the world. And they fund it to make sure that happens.
So the digital transformation is helping to support it. So just coming back to the rest of the panel, there's a theme here in terms of how long things are taking. Clearly they're not taking very long in Saudi Arabia. They're taking longer in certain places, like the Swiss example you mentioned, Anthony. And in Paris, there's a 10-year plan for these sorts of different things. Carrie's spoken about short-term leases and the importance of these various different things. But what we're trying to achieve here is some kind of retail experience, the thing that pulls people back, again and again. And what I wanted to ask, and I wanted to come to Yurdaer, if I may, is thinking about, is there a common thread in your experience across Asia and Europe and perhaps North America? I can't remember if you mentioned North America, but across Asia and Europe in terms of the elements of how to make faster decisions to speed things up, because delays, killing, it's a Warren Buffett, time kills deals, right? So what we're saying is, how do we speed things up? And as Michael Dyke said earlier today, make decisions without regret. You know, how do we speed those things up? Speaking as a man who's dealing directly with the banks.
I mean, first of all, it's not important how big you are. Today is important how fast you are. That's crucial. And again, just slightly coming back, if you allow, Eddie, you know more than me, but Saudi Arabia, for example, it makes a high appetite when you hear this today during the day. Everyone wants to go to Saudi. You know, they are well prepared. They set up years ago in an infrastructure. They have a PIF fund. I just met them 2 months ago. And every year is coming $200 billion into this fund. They have, you know, a vision. It's not only Saudi Arabia. This is the biggest, you said, regarding the population, 35 million. But they are also looking over the seas, for example. They are looking to Africa as well. They want to go to the EAC region and to the COMESA region, which are regions in Africa where you are comprising almost 600 million people. From there, they go to North Africa, to Egypt. So Saudi Arabia has a clear vision. It's an amazing project, and just to see that and then entering and get a part of the cake, you will not win a race. Second, looking to China, for example. Today in the morning we talked about luxury segments. I'm very much convinced that after 2030, luxury is China, definitely. Today we see in China deflation. We see challenges regarding the GDP. It's just the last quarter was 4.65. China definitely needs always 2 digits growth. The growth is not there where they need to be. But the government and the politics, they put in strategies and starting to inject things, you know, to motivate the economy again. That is China. China is a topic where things are changing rapidly. And not only in terms of real estate. Today, real estate, there's a certain challenge as well, as we might have heard in the news. But China has immediate answers. Takes maybe some time, but this is a crucial topic for Western Europe, for example. In Western Europe, you know, you have seen problems are coming towards yourself, but they didn't act. If you see today in Western Europe, I mean, countries and companies still working with OKI printers. I don't know if you remember that, you know, and you go to Saudi Arabia, they have everything so easy made. You go somewhere else to China, you see video analytics. You go into, for example, in our mall in China, you go into the mall, you go into the store, you see video analytics. And then you see CMS, for example, analytics. It's not like that I'm going to the store and they offer me, I don't know, casual, what I never wear. So they know exactly it. With the data, what you said, that is very important. They are using that and then they are transforming that and attracting people. But when you give me a team, Jane, today of 5 people from this room, with me together, 6, we go to Oxford Street and then you get answers rapidly, okay? So let me tell like this. Another topic is regarding the social media as well, to make the difference. Today, all over the world, Ethiopia, Saudi Arabia, I don't know, Chile, Turkey, whatever, Germany, everyone is due to social media today on the same level. And now comes the challenge. You need to be the one who is in competing better than the others. So that is a huge challenge. A lot of companies today, you will see in the future, will have huge problems. They will run to insolvency. They have the wrong decisions. The biggest problem is also people. There is no more lean management, for example, in Western Europe. Too complicated. So many areas with so many managing directors, with so many regional directors, you know, annoying people there, you know, who are so innovative, telling them AI could run, could not run, depends on the project. You cannot say, I'm doing digitization like this if you have just 5 projects. It's different than you have 100 projects, for example. AI you're using differently when you have 200 projects than you have 30 projects. If you have distressed projects, then your first question must be how I can increase the value of the project and not maybe digitization, because to fulfill the places. So there are people, they neglect, they have fear, I think, as well, to approach this topic. We had one AI blockchain company. We have also in our company, as you mentioned, in our group, Finberg, which is a capital venture management company. We invested almost recently $100 million in almost 64 companies. where we exit also 10 or 14, also we see companies inside. So we just make an example, and we didn't took our mall in China, where you would say now, you definitely took China, no. Not one of the capitals from Eastern Europe. We took Inegöl. Inegöl is a district of Bursa. And we put there this company. We made some gifts over NFT, and there we had even limited edition NFTs. And I said to my team, when from the visitors in 1 month, below 3% are participating, we don't do that anymore over there, we go somewhere else. 22% participated. Out of this 22, 65% were new customers. And the people there were keen to NFT. The younger population is like this. I went to our university, which you know very well, the Özyeğin University, OZU, and I talked to younger generation, what I'm doing every 6 months. When you hear what they're telling me, I mean, you need to have a different mindset. The biggest problem here is the people. You even see like MTs. Today, a management trainees could be later a fantastic person, but you are losing those people. With these ideas, the ideas are running out of the companies. This is very crucial. I think this is a huge challenge where we don't know what will happen when we are comparing with other countries. Topics like reconversion, I can give an example. We had real estate, for example, with a value of 50 million euros. Now we tripled it to 150 million. Great issue. If you can't do this, you have some alternatives. You rechange the functionality or you knock down. That is also an opportunity, for example. Then you go to the authorities and try to do something else. But the time to use synergy worldwide, as also Dimitri said today, what I find very interesting, you're competing somehow with the world. And when we go to a certain company or group in La Coruña, most likely, when we talk to them and we get the feedback that they are closing down some areas in a country or in a region, then they go, for example, to your hometown or to yours or to you to France. Or we go to another company which is opening up, luxury segment, for example. They say, this year, I just entered to 3 airports and that's it. And maybe 1 high street, maybe I come back to Champs-Élysées, but I'm not going to Istanbul, I'm not going to Athens, I'm not going to, to the tier 2 cities in China, because, there is a huge challenge today. So you need to be very close to the market. You need to be very close to the new concept, to the new technologies. You need to educate, above all, the talents, the young people, and lean management. We cannot work together. We said public sector, for example. Sometimes I'm talking to companies, they are more difficult than public companies. So complicated. And then you see immediately, and 10 years, 5 years, we're not a pension fund. If you have 40 years, 50 years, but when I see 15 years, 20 years, then I would have done, 3 projects in my life. Thanks God, out of the 25 years, I've done more than 150 with enlarging, exiting, buying, and whatever it is. But time is crucial, working with the right companies, knowing the world very well, because a lot of people do not know Saudi Arabia, for example, Africa. If you go to Kenya, amazing. China is very intensive in Africa. There are some countries, they give them guarantees. And then you see when the time is coming, before the guarantees are running out, then you see they get a World Bank loan, for example, from the United States. So things are so quick and so fast. So let me answer your question like this.
Well, that brings me on to what will be my last question. We don't have a great deal of time left, but I remember reading the article in Wired magazine that was, the future of retail is experiential, but my question would be, because experience in retail is an overused term almost these days, but does experiential have to mean short-term retail? And clearly, Carrie, would you agree with that? Because ultimately, the owners and investors in the audience will all be thinking, well, we need we need longevity of place. We need placemaking that will give you that covenant that the banks need. Carrie, you're saying that you can deliver, 3 times as much money than rent, with an experience. So where does that balance lie? perhaps comes to
I think
you
there's
first.
two parts to it. One,
Does
I
it have
know-
to be short term?
No, I think on the next panel, you have the founder from Future Stores. I think what they're doing is very interesting because it is a permanent retail location, but they're bringing in brands that are short term. But Outernet, one of the reasons why I was so drawn to it, the video they showed me the first time, as in the developers of Outernet, was experiential retail where you could actually, instead of going, somebody was saying about not trying on clothing anymore, you can stand in front of a mirror and you can swipe and see what the outfits look, and you can QR codes, ship it to your house. So I think it doesn't have to be short term necessarily. I think the bigger problem is that everyone is always so focused on these established luxury brands. It's a safe play, I get it, but it's actually looking more towards the trendsetters and the people that are on the rise and nurturing those brands to give them a platform, I think, to have a voice. Because Louis Vuitton will always be there, and so will Chanel and so will Gucci. But what about all these other people that we need to invest in to lift their brands up?
Anthony, you wanted to mention about luxury brands and what their role is in moving fashion faster, not fast fashion, but luxury brands moving the real estate story along in a faster way. What would you have to say about that?
Yeah, there's a word that I think doesn't work with the sustainability, strategy, and also I would say implementing a long-term sustainable project is a fast. This word doesn't exist, in the strategy that we implement in the different situation. This word, I don't like it, because there are two situations. The first one is, I ask you, all of us around this table, let's make very sustainable project, okay? As mentioned, Yurdaer, where? The clock in Turkey, in China, in Dubai, in Saudi, in France, England, and US not the same. What's the clock? It means the time you need to implement any project, okay? It means the time is not the same time. The time is much more longer in some country, and much more shorter in some others. And one of the most beautiful innovation of Dubai, that they made the time faster to implement technology, to implement innovation. It means that the countries or the companies or any organization that want to be sustainable with the project, with the activity, they need to have the excellent innovation management at the highest level efficient. It means that in many business schools, actually they are creating this new chapter of education. There is a master's now, École Polytechnique in France, and some other MIT, Harvard, and others. They're creating something that 10 years ago we didn't have. Innovation management. And what's happened? The country like Saudi, they can go totally to the war, to the wall. Not the wall that you're building, another wall, okay? And this country can totally fail if there is not fantastic managers able to drive innovation. And what's happened with Sheikh Maktoum in Dubai, that's for me a fantastic, I would say, example of how innovation is managed. It's not only one action, it's a plenty of action, like a puzzle that they come together and it takes time to implement. It means that if you have a retail that it doesn't work, there is no miracle like a cancer. You put like that, and bing, you become champion. Doesn't exist. I think you can help, of course, a little bit by putting some animation. Some people, they can dance in front of that, or you make some gift every day, but you don't change the fundamentals if there is a big mistake on that. You want to drive changes. If you want to make sustainable something doesn't work, it means we need innovation, managing innovation, implementing innovation. It depends where. China, France, Dubai, and sometimes it's not possible. What we discussed together later.
Yeah.
I had the experience, in many countries. We had hundreds of assets, hundreds of shopping centers. We shut down some of them all because we said this is not possible to, to make sustainable. Because it's too late, because competition's around, because the concept is too old. It was built 40 years ago, first generation. iPhone 1, iPhone 16. Some shopping centers are like iPhone 1. And you cannot compete with iPhone 1 in 2025. The iPhone 16 is working. You know what I mean? The thing is we have to be very, very objective. When we are in front of the situation, in some situation in my shopping centers, for example, we decide to shut down and to build a new project. You saw some of the project here.
Yeah.
And in some other cases, we made the maximum works to make it sustainable. But in the two case, time is necessary and also leadership of innovation.
Yeah,
that's
it's
the key
good.
point.
It was good to hear that there are developers grasping the nettle and actually completely changing assets, demolishing assets, and then changing uses. Edie, sorry, you.
Just a couple of comments on what I heard. So your point about going, I mentor as well, and young people. My mother, God rest her soul, used to say, if you want to stay young, be around young people. And young is all relative as I age. But I can tell you, every company I've ever been in, I had a young committee. You can't legally call it that in America. But you want those 35-year and younger minds, and putting together like mutual mentoring where somebody with, the 35-year age range or less partners with the 35-year-old plus, and great innovation can come from those two perspectives combining. So I think that's very important. The other thing about assets, so when the pandemic hit, all the stories, particularly in America, all the headlines were, this mall's closing down, the malls are dead, people are only going to buy online. You take a brand like Skims that started online, Kim Kardashian's now multi-billion-dollar company, right? Now she started to test the waters with pop-ups, and now she has retail locations strategically placed. And so your point about you start with iPhone 1 and now you're at iPhone 16, iPhone 1 being that mall that was built 30 years ago. So in South Florida, Aventura Mall is a very, not as high-end as Bal Harbour, but was a nice upscale mall in its heyday. Then it went through this whole deterioration. Now it's building back. So what did they do? They built outposts that are combinable with all the trendy top restaurants, etc. But she chose for her South Florida Skims location in that location. So 1 week, the malls are going to become housing projects, and they're going to knock them down or redo them into apartments. And the next thing is, no, now retail's back. So I guess what is critical is that we have an evolutionary, perpetual changing consumer. And so I always say, take care of your team members, they'll take care of your customer, guests, whatever. But it is so important to be cognizant of who is the customer and what do they want, and with data to try to be ahead of the curve of what changes need to take place so that you don't lose them.
I know, in Saudi, obviously, you've got a lot of, youth forums and committees helping to guide that, things like the Miss Global Forum, that type of thing. Now, very, very last point, because we have to wrap up and move on.
I just want to add some few sentences. For example, our mall in China, in Shenyang, which is in the northern eastern part, we really went even to the warehouses. We said, how did you develop? How much new stores you will set up? Where you want to go? How you do the delivery? How you do the logistics? We really have seen a real infrastructure behind that. Sometimes you also need to deep dive with your teams. And today, we have, due to this hypermarket, a very good, sustainability is a huge word, but here, definitely more frequencies and almost 1.1, 1.2 million per month in one mall, by the way. And again, what is coming on the top, we can think about artificial intelligence, digitization. The most important topic is always also to look micro. Where is the location where we are? To increase the dwell time, for example, in that mall, what we have done is to keep the people from morning till the evening. We have education for the kids above all, because the one-child policy, as you remember and know very well, is very important in China. And we have their art, we have skiing, we have drums, we have English lessons, we have swimming, everything. Then we have the fine dining together with a lot of restaurants, with a food court area, other entertainment areas as well, like cinemas, etc., and so on. When you put them all together, you have a certain kind of edutainment, how we call it in our concept. And there we have a dwell time from the morning till somehow the afternoon, even mid-time till the evening. That brings sustainability. You keep the customers. And on top of this, if you do digitization and so on and forth, and the right stores, by the way, they're coming also up very new stores in China, local stores, by the way, Chinese stores. They have learned. They are not only producing, they have learned. And what is interesting, therefore it's very important to know the world. When you go there, you see a certain kind of sub-segmentation. Imagine you have a sports store. You go on the left side, it's football, just a certain piece. You go in the middle, it's skiing, just a certain piece. You go on the right side or whatever, you see swimming. But everything just a little bit. They took out trekking, yoga. I never expected a yoga store which can be 250, 300, 400 square meters. And then they have done this in beauty even. They did it more, sub-segmentation in beauty. Therefore, for example, L'Oreal invested and bought, just 2 years
Yeah, I
ago,
saw
you know
that,
that, about $2 billion, an online beauty store where they're no seeking for stationery. So this is very much important. Life is so quick there, and that is because I'm saying fast. Being there, knowing that, and not underestimating with prejudice which exists due to years or decades because you have earned it from your own garden where you never disappeared. That's my last
Yeah,
sentence.
Tim mentioned that this morning as well.
Regarding your question you said about luxuries, how they do. I mean, one point is very interesting because the lesson that you can see, the major evolution that is coming from, in the retail sector is, and also luxury brand, they are really in the first step. I mean, I would say first class for that. You can see during the last 10 years how all of these brands with $1 billion capacities, okay, invested in hotels, invested in diversification, buying restaurants, brands, creating, different activities, bringing together a kind of, let's say, hub when they go somewhere. For example, a very great example of that, you have Samaritan. It was in French,
Yeah, it's a great
department
example.
store in 2005. It was dying. It was 100 years, retail. And what's happened? No chance for these, huge, department store to survive again. But when LVMH put 1 billion euros, 1 billion, into just bring a new, let's say, ideas inside, creating 5-star hotel, Cheval Blanc, creating 15 restaurants inside. Outside, you have a museum, a Dream, El Dream by LVMH. I was yesterday there. Different brands, the cafeterias, everything. The other side, animation, and more than 400 brands that came inside. When you go actually to Samaritan, you go to a kind of ecosystem that is fully driven by LVMH, with one man at the top, like Sheikh Maktoum in Dubai. He's Bernard Arnault with a real motivation, to drive innovation, to drive, a best project without, any kind of limit on excellence. When you see to such a place, you can see the change. 2005, 2020. It takes 15 years to bring it up with hundreds of problems everywhere. Is why I tell you time is a very key point that it doesn't happen one night.
Time is a very important thing.
You can see the example of
Anthony.
LVMH.
So,
But the example of LVMH, we can see that in Champs-Élysées, we can see Avenue Montaigne, we can see that in Avenue, je dirais, Faubourg Saint-Honoré. In all of these places is a combination, synergy of the activity that creates a sustainable future for the retail, and it's more than 10 billion was invested by luxury group in France during the last 10 years to create a sustainable street, sustainable destination, and sustainable let's say environment by bringing hotel, restaurant, museum.
That is a singular, great example that summarises the importance with the public-private partnership, the speeding up of time, a fantastic experience within the store, but also the power of youth and education along in that entire process.
And passion for excellence is emotion.
And to your point, Mr. Arnault, there's a reason he's one of the toggles between the world's richest man, 1, 2, and 3. He can fund his own passion. I've had the privilege of being at Cheval Blanc and experiencing that whole neighborhood. That neighborhood was dying. He revived it.
Like in Maktoum and Sheikh
Yes,
Saudi,
yes.
the people like that, they can drive innovation.
Anyway, right.
I think you need a coffee.
Yeah, we need to go. Thank you very much.
Thank you
thanks
so
to the
much,
panel,
Dan.
Edie,
Thank you
Anthony,
all. Thank you.
Yurdaer, and Sakari.